Okay. Wow, what an introduction. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. I love Paris. I come regularly, and I always think to myself I should spend more time here. I'm going to talk today around the data-driven economy, and I'm going to try and put into context the data piece of the story. And it's really interesting, but I want everyone to relax. Just sit back. This is story time, right? This is going to be straightforward. There is a safe harbor statement here because I will talk about some new things that are going on, but a safe harbor is always there just to remind you to make your decisions based on what's currently available and not on forward-looking statements. I don't want to bury the lead, so I think it's important if we only had one slide and you had to go back and speak to your managing director, the idea of getting data correct should be about revenue, right? You can expect a revenue lift automatically when you start focusing in the data domain by anywhere from 5 to 15%. And we have lots of documented examples of this. The second one is when you go back and talk to your CMO, who is now responsible for revenue, she's going to ask what sort of a conversion rate expectation can we get? Where can we find more efficiency? And this may go up all the way to a 30% increase. Again, we have lots of examples to share with you. And finally, it's the idea about the cost of customer acquisition. And a lot of the drop in customer acquisition comes from focusing on your very best customers and actually increasing the amount of wallet share you have. So this is the lead, this is the story, these are the 3 points, but it's rather dry, right? So how do we bring it to life? I want to first point out that when we talk about data, we talk about 3 different types: transactions from things that you do that generate first-party data. Transactional data has no GDPR implications, right? The second type is business data, right? Data that you can bring in a B2B sense about a company and the profile of a company. And the third type of data, consumer data, often gets a bad rap because of GDPR. But it's important to recognize that for all of us, in all of the companies we do business with and in our own personal life, there is advertising. This business for Oracle in the area of using consumer data to help marketers and advertisers find audiences quicker is a perfectly normal, legitimate business operation. So bringing data out of the third-party world to the first-party world is where it becomes tricky. And so we'll talk to you about techniques today about coming through gated content or getting individuals to give permission to use their data and really enrich the data set. Now let's make it a little bit more lighthearted. One of my favorite reads is in The Economist, and it starts back in 2010 around this idea of the data deluge, right? It was about 2000 when the cloud started going, and about 10 years later, when it became very obvious that data was becoming the differentiator. If we fast forward, it's interesting that the folks at The Economist stayed with the theory, and just in 7 short years, we're able to say it's not about the applications, it's not about everything else, it is simply about the data. And the new rules of competition around data have changed for all of us. So again, how does this happen, right? How does it come that companies have changed so dramatically? We would put forth it looks something like this. This, I smiled when I looked at it. This is the first iPhone. 2007, it was June. It looks a lot like the current iPhone, ironically. Of course, there's no longer a button here. There's 2 on the side instead of 3. There's power on the top. It's got a different set of connectors. But this simple device that doesn't look like it has changed so much has changed everything, right? What did it change? Well, first of all, if we were to look at 2010 and the companies that really started to change the way they did business, we would get, right, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google. You may have even noticed that I painted the screen by their market cap, by how much they're worth. Now think about it. Since 2007, these companies have become more valuable than nation states. Right, here's a pop quiz for you guys. If I could give you these 4 companies in this hand, and I could give you Russia in this hand, which one should you pick? Right? You're an investor. Right? If you could sell these 4 companies today or take the entire output of Russia for a year, which one is more valuable? You're acting like Finns. You're not saying a word. Come on, this isn't a trick question. Obviously, these 4 companies are worth more than an empire that's been around for hundreds of years. Let's try it different. Let's go across the Atlantic, or across the channel, I should say. I could give you these 4 companies, or I could give you, that's the UK up there. Which one should you take? Come on, it's not a trick question. You know the answer to this. Whether or not there's ever a Brexit, who knows? It's more exhausting than US politics, really, right? It's obvious. The value of those 4 companies, if you could sell all of their stock today or take the entire output of the UK for an entire year, you should take these 4 companies. Now, this is just since 2007. So my question is, for all of this, where's a better proof? Where's a better statement that I could explain to a colleague? I'm very fond of reading Scott Galloway. He wrote a book about a year ago that I would advocate for everyone to pick up. For all the Oracle folks, everybody's picked it up to read it. I was so enamored with what the author said that I bought copies for my kids and my nieces and nephews because I wanted them to understand in a very simple fashion what's the bigger picture about data, right? In the book, what the author explains, he's an economist. He works for a noted university and he's a venture capitalist. He'll be on the Nobel list because of this research that he's done. He talks about they not only have more data than everyone, but the real trick to creating value for their shareholders is in how they use it. And they use it with something called a graph. And it's easy for a graph to feel like it might be too technical, so I'm going to try and really bring a graph down to something simple. All of us in here are in a couple of graphs, whether we realize it or not, and we're actually in them by choice, which is even more interesting. A graph that a lot of us entered into, in fact, 4 billion people on the planet Earth entered into, is called Facebook, right? A record versus a graph. A record in your business system, whether it's in your marketing application or your sales or service, whether it's in e-commerce, if it's in your ERP system or your financial system or your supply chain or logistics system, a record generally thinks of one of us with something about anywhere from 5 to about 20 characters or attributes of who we are. Our name, our address, perhaps a customer number, right? If it's a more comprehensive system, it might have my age or my ethnicity or my income level or my address. But you start to get the idea. A record is fairly small. On the other hand, a graph may have up to 40,000 attributes. 40,000 attributes, right? Even the best marketers I have found on the continent over the last 90 days of going country by country tend to market with no more than about 8 attributes. I've heard numbers as low as 5 and as high as 20, but it tends to be about 8. So think about this. If you're marketing with 8 attributes, and the Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple type companies are marketing with up to 40,000 attributes, it's not a surprise they've been able to be so much more effective and drive up revenue. So all of us are in Facebook. Where's another graph where all of us are? Right? Pretty much everyone at this conference has chosen to put their details into LinkedIn. Right? All of us go and curate our own information. We talk about our business relationships. We talk about our university relationships. We share the story of our work career. Right? All of us willingly curate our details and give it available to the world to understand how to do better business together. Right? This concept of a graph, and the reason I'm taking the time is because this is the key to taking advantage of the data economy, of the experience economy. We all have limitations of what we can do with our current systems. We all have limited capital to invest. But if we decide to take on a new mode to run in parallel, we can accelerate our results. So I would say, coming out of this conference today, your question should be, even out of this session, what about my company? How do I bring this back to my workplace? How do I start to bring my peers up to an understanding of how we can engage? I think a good definition or a good place to start is to just simply go through what does it look like, right? This little diagram that I start to draw is a sum total of about 30 years of trying to figure out how to take very complex topics and simplify it so that you could explain it to anyone. Every business is about acquiring customers. We want to see acquisition of customer go up because that means revenues go up. Every business is also about eliminating attrition or eliminating churn, and we'd like to see that go down. In the positive way of saying it to some people, I'll say it's about retaining your customers. But at the same time, I want revenue up and retention to increase. I want churn to go down. If I put the customer in the center of the experience, then I have 4 different quadrants where I engage with them. The first one is I tend to engage in what we all call the front office. It's where I take euros or dollars or yen or pounds or francs or whatever currency I'm doing, and I put it into a funnel, and I bring it through my process of maturing it till generating either a lead or ideally a sale. And at the bottom of the funnel, when I have a sale, whether it's B2B, whether it's B2B2C, whether it's B2C, whether it's direct to consumer, it doesn't matter. In every instance, I take that data that I've generated in the selling process, if it's been working with an agency, if it's been through advertising, if it's all in-house, I take that data and I bring it into my back office systems of record, right? I put it in and it goes into all of these other systems that drive my business. Now, I haven't drawn it on the slide the way sometimes I like to explain about data silos, because all of us have different back-end systems in this quadrant, and that beautiful record, all 5 to 20 fields, describing the human gets so fragmented and split across so many systems that it's very, very difficult to get a full perspective of a customer, or how multiple customers relate to each other, or how multiple employees inside of a single business relate to each other. But this is business as we know it. Right? This is the internal view of the company. I'm going to work harder to generate more at the top, generate more sales, and I'm going to work real hard to keep them. Right? I'm going to put customer service around the bottom. And that's how every company runs everywhere in the world. So this is kind of a rule of the game. Even for the GAFAs or for the FANGs, they run the same way. Amazon or Apple or Facebook or Google markets to all of us. We become a customer, and then they put us in their back office systems of record and continue. So you are just like them. However, we said in 2007, when these dandy little fellas came out, we all started commenting all the time. We all started offering our perspective about, I think in Emmanuel's slides we saw, whoever buys something with 3 stars, right? Those 3 stars are a byproduct of all the people who said 4 stars and 5 stars. Over here, there's all sorts of data that can enrich and give a signal about what I intend to do that I cannot capture in the lower left-hand corner. None of these types of data were even thought of when those types of systems were built. And it's not possible to grab this type of data and to put it into the systems on the left. There's just too much of it. We used to say that there's only 2 things in life that are certain: death and taxes, right? In the US, my president has proved not even taxes are certain. But what is certain is that since the start of this morning, when you made your way here to now, there is more data. Data is growing at such a quick rate that the economists nailed it. When they said there's a deluge, they should have said it's going to be a perfect storm going forward forever at how much more data is coming in. So the people that are getting ahead are finding signals in the data in the lower right and combining it with what they know as an absolute in the lower left and what they know about you in the upper left. So there's only one other area to contemplate data, and that's in this area where all of us get charged to do innovation, or digital transformation, or digitization. Those are all words that mean the same thing to me. When I hear someone say that, I think revenue. A simple note is that whenever you go in front of somebody at the senior level, you can be certain they have 3 problems. Either they don't have enough revenue, or their data is too siloed, or they just don't have the capability to change because of how much risk is there. Every company in the world, except for the one who has the most revenue, has a problem not having the most revenue, right? Everybody in the world has that issue again of silos because it's just a function of how systems work. And everybody's got this challenge again about, I don't have the time and the effort and the money to take the risk out and to do a big program. So how does it happen? The GAFAs and the FANGs do something called global compute. So I'm just going to present a new idea to you here. All of the systems you run today are those 4 quadrants. This idea of using a global compute layer is part of what's new. This is running outside of your business. If I was to expand on this idea of a global compute, I just want you to know, well, let me go back one here a second. When I say to my phone, and it's turned off, so I didn't want it to go. If I said, hey Siri, and asked it a question, Siri can go out and query the sum total knowledge of humanity, right? And come back and give me an answer in a few hundred milliseconds. Do you think that anything at Apple headquarters stops? Uh-oh, Joe's asking a question. Better stop doing the business of Apple. What is it, Joe? We're listening. That's not how it works, right? When any of you say, hey, Alexa, or hey, Google, do you think that anything stops in Seattle or Mountain View, California? Absolutely not. They have to run their business just like you have to run your business. So where are they taking that question? How are they answering it? And what are they doing with the data they get back that has changed the revenue outlook? Like I said, they run on a global compute layer. I'm going to show you a picture of our global compute layer in a couple of minutes. This is a really important topic because companies no longer have enough capital to invest in building their own global compute layer. So there's not an internal alternative. You can't say we'll do it on our own. This is the one part of the argument I think every corporation needs to understand. To compete in the future, you're going to have to go out to a global compute layer. This is not radical, right? We don't own telecommunications systems. The telcos build them, and we use a phone. We're not going to own global compute. There are going to be companies that have built them, and we're going to use it. There are only 4 or 5 in the world doing this now, right? Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google all have a global compute. Apple, the most valuable company in the world, doesn't share it with anybody, right? Amazon and Google will give you time on their system. You can buy it, and they will capture your data, and they're upfront about that, and they will use it to sell, right? Facebook has a global compute. It appears to be free, but we all know they monetize us. And that comes to a pretty screeching halt, right? If you go to China, you would have to work with Tencent, right? If you want to run in an environment with your global compute layer and not compete with the vendor, then the answer is Oracle or it is Microsoft. And in fact, Oracle and Microsoft have partnered together to make it even stronger, right? So by telling you who has a global compute, you could ask logically the question, who doesn't have one, right? Companies like IBM that used to dominate the world no longer do global compute. Any of you running at SAP in the back end, I worked there for years, there is no global compute. Any of you who work with a friend of mine and one of my former employers, a guy named Mark Benioff, there is no global compute, right? Lots of these companies no longer do global compute because it's too expensive, right? Oracle has invested in this layer for decades, and we're now partnering with Microsoft, and our combined energies has built a global compute layer. On this global compute layer, I need to run this data cloud. I need to run a place where I take first-party data that you generate and possibly your second-party data and run it side by side with algorithms. Run it side by side with that graph we were talking about. The graph lives here. I put over this third-party type of data because in some markets and for lots of uses, I can enrich my own data with external insights. It has to be done on a case-by-case basis, but it's actually very important. Because if I can do it, I can really start to find signals. On top of that, I would run a layer where I run my algorithms, my machine learning, where I ask business questions and strategy questions, where I would execute against this idea of machine learning to get better and better and better. This is how the FANGs, this is how the GAFAs find patterns in the data to suggest what they should do next. And they just do it very quickly. I should always be thinking about my content factory. Getting the right message to the right person at the right time can fall on deaf ears if it's not the right format. This suggests that you should send a WhatsApp when that's the preferred method. You should send a video when that's the preferred method, right? You should send an email when that's the preferred method. And maybe you should even send an ebook if that's the preferred method. The determination of the preferred method is actually the individual you're talking to in the graph, right? It's an individual understanding of a single person. Far too often people struggle because they think, I'll just work with personas. I'll just send it to the persona of a marketer, the persona of a seller, the persona of a buyer. We're all different. It has to be individual, and the content needs to be matching individual. When I go from there, then, it becomes how do I distribute? Right, it's a simple idea. Here at Oracle, we're very proud to work with both Eloqua and Responsys, the 2 broadest distribution channels for marketing messages on the planet. In fact, we're coming up to a great time of year here in the States. When I'm home, we call it Thanksgiving. It's the biggest family holiday in the country. Everybody participates. The day after Thanksgiving, you guys probably all know we call it Black Friday. We all go shopping together. Last year on Black Friday, Oracle sent out, distributed, on behalf of our clients, 1.6 billion messages that day on Black Friday. That's more than half of the buying population of Earth. 3 days later on Monday, we call it Cyber Monday, right? And on Cyber Monday, we sent out 1.7 billion messages on behalf of our clients. Now think about this. For every single day of 2019, by better using data, our clients send over 2 billion messages a day, basically talking to half the planet at a time that can buy things with the right message at the right time in the right format. This is improving revenue. That's the whole purpose behind it. So if I take this forward, I just want to say, hey, Joe, how does this work? Most people think about distributing their message in the form of personalized marketing. And at Oracle, we're experts in this and we can help you. We think about pushing it into the funnel, getting the right content, taking it to a conversion system in commerce, and then servicing it. You'll see these last two layers have euro signs on them because if I put and do this well, I get more euros, I get more revenue, my company wins, my revenue goes up. What we have found with the GAFAs is they not only do this, they just think 1 or 2 or 3 levels going up. So to introduce you to those, the first one is the idea of real-time behaviors. If I'm in a program with a customer that has a loyalty affiliation, or if I've got a customer number, or if I've got a mobile device on record with them, they can start to look at real-time behavior and change the way the offers go in. It's like putting more euros into the top of the funnel to get more out of the bottom. The next step up is to really get advanced in my segmentation and think about market by market, category by category, product offering service by product offering service. And doing advanced segmentation on the fly is what the GAFAs do. Right? Finally, if I want to think in a global customer intelligence platform, it would mean to apply this in every one of the 4 quadrants. And when I do, this is how the revenue really drives to the top. Now, it's a simple, straightforward thing. There will be lots of people here today who can speak to it. But keep this in mind, because most of us start our funnel thinking personalized marketing and down. And the way the others have exploded their revenue in the last 12 years is they've started going up, but looking for the right kind of people to sell to. How does all this work? Very quickly, I just want to give you a picture to think about. We're not going to take it all apart. But this idea of finding a signal and finding a graph works something like this. I consider certain types of seeds, meaning I predict the action of a group of individuals, and I think about the behaviors that I would use to predict it, and I put a model there. That's where the learning works. And I feed it into a system where I do math and I score. It's very straightforward. It's no different than how an insurance company would rate one of us for what kind of pricing to charge us, say, for our car. It's simply how it works. We get scored. Then where the graph comes in is the graph can look at lots of different IDs that are connected to us individually. Lots of different ways of thinking of us. And by connecting the IDs to each other, I can then start to think about when I push my message out, how do I push? This is the key piece of it. It's that graph that thinks about all the different ways to identify individuals. It's what resolves identity across channels. And there's lots of people here who can talk to you about this. But this is just a simple picture to help to start to break this out. Because where I take this is to that global footprint. When I said there was a belt around the Earth doing compute so a question can get answered in 115 milliseconds, these are the data centers around the world. This is what the footprint looks like when we combine not only our own for public use, for governmental use, for the private sector use, but also then where we connect with Microsoft and do the same thing. We are making it easy as possible for your corporation to ring the planet with an answer to a question in moments. The topics today and the topics you can come and ask Oracle people about very easily are broad and wide. These are all functional solutions that can help you get better in the individual. So I just want people to walk and understand from the data perspective, it always does come down to individual topics that we have to improve on, but I can take advantage of solving for a topic or thinking and solving towards data. And when I put them together, I come over the top. The last thing I want you to understand or take away is that this doesn't happen overnight. Oracle has been investing in the concept of applications and data to continue to help people drive revenue now for a very long time. If we go all the way back to 2006 when Siebel came into the picture and come all the way forward to today, you can see that there is a continuous Acknowledgement and understanding that the best ideas come from just about everywhere. And by bringing them together and thinking about the data in a nonstop fashion, or even highlighting here specifically what has become this data cloud, you will have the insights and the answers to go forward and take it back to your organization. So please, I invite you to think about what to do next, right? I'd like to discuss strategy with you. I think you should discuss strategy with Oracle and get aligned on a vision. I think you should collaborate with your teams and the people that are here today. You should pick a case when you go out of here that needs to get validated so you're certain that it could work. And then we would invite you to a proof of concept, right? And then generate revenue. So it's pretty straightforward about what to do next. And I thank you all very much for our time here this morning.
Andrew?